Got to start the record.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Yeah, Danny, what'd you say?
The integrity of the house.
Yeah, the integrity of the house, in this case, in a lot of cases, mostly do with how it uses energy, or how poorly it uses energy. We're going to look at one of the companies we're going to look at off and on during this course is called Building Performance Institute. And we'll look at their audit, one of their audits today, just briefly. And they do a lot of, they audit for indoor air quality and safety. It's the same thing for CO, for carbon monoxide. And they just added that onto their energy audit. So if you work for them and you're an auditor and you go to a house, you'll do a blower door test like other auditors do. You might do even a test for the ducts, a duct blasting test. But they also test all the appliances for CO. They have a little meter and they go around. They check for ambient CO because that's a real killer gas. And it's not unusual to have it in an old house. And we're going to look at how they test it. And that's a real good service, you know, keeping people from getting sick or dying. But most of them don't do that. That's that combustion testing to see if there's CO is kind of something they added on, but I think it's kind of interesting. We'll look at that later. So after you diagnose the house, then it doesn't do any good unless you give the owner a way to fix the things they're diagnosed. And so some companies that have an audit also do the work. They're construction companies. So they have a work side. So they'll tell you what's wrong and they'll offer to fix it. And so there's a little bit of conflict of interest there. So they have a whole ethical code that goes along with that, you know, to make sure you don't prescribe things that aren't needed, or diagnose things that you can fix and charge them what they don't need to. So they usually attach a prescription for fixing problems, which is pretty obvious usually. You know, if the leak's coming in the bottom of the door, then you just say you put a door threshold on it, you know, a sweep on it. So they're all related, but they still nevertheless spell that out. And then one of the reasons we have this class and we look at this is it's a way to really focus in on a house and look at it in real detail, because that's what these audits do, right? They're there to solve all these problems. So to find out about the problems, you can follow the categories and the intricacies of the audit analysis. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to show a couple. All these YouTubes are short. I'm going to show a couple now, and then we're going to look at that whole stack of stuff. It goes pretty fast. You'll see it's just lists of things, but we want to look at it in some detail. And then we'll look at we'll take a break in there somewhere. We'll look at a couple more YouTubes. Again, they're short. If I can get this all working.
Patrick,
Yes.
do you need a license to audit?
No.
Okay.
Well,
What kind of qualifications do you need?
well, let me take that back. You can start your own audit company. You don't need a license. But there's companies already set up that do it, like BPI, and then you have to have an audit. You have to have a certificate for the type of audit you do. And we're going to talk about that. When I was starting all this stuff, I decided I needed to take that to find out what it was about. And it's really hard. It was much harder than I thought. And they teach you like a week in class and like 5 days of classes, not all day. And then they go on a Saturday and they go to a house and you have to demonstrate that you can do all the audit. And you know, for your first time, so you have to do a blower door. And that's why I have you guys do a blower door in a couple of weeks here. So if you ever go into something like that, you'll be a little more familiar with it, because you don't, you know, they'll go over what it's like they'll show a video or they'll tell you, but unless you do it, you don't know. So if you take one out of the box and set it up here, and do it, and you'll be just 100 yards ahead of the game there. So, and you know, some, like I said, Dennis Allen used to have a division in his company that did diagnostic testing like this, and some companies still have access to blower doors, and they may use them. Some call in specialists to do it. So BPI is one company, and then HERS is another company, the HERS Raiders. They also audit, and we'll talk more about them too. They're becoming very important now. You can, by the time we go through this and look at even the government do-it-yourself audit off the internet, everybody in this class will be able to go to their own home and audit, where obviously you don't need a credential to do that. Let's see. So has anybody ever watched This Old House? Any of you guys? So it's a show. It's on PBS, on public television, but it's made in Boston. Well, they're centered in Boston, but they go all over New England. It's been around for like, I don't know, 30 years. And if you get this, I get it with cable. So if you have, you should look. I forget what station. It's not, probably not still on public television, PBS, which is 24 down here, I think. But they have really good shows on how to make things. It's a little bit different than we do here because it's New England based. So I worked 10 years in Maine and actually was involved with that a little bit. And they really do things. There's a lot more hand work than electrical work. They do both, but it's still more of a craft than it is here. But every week they do a different thing on a house. They may be on a house for like a month. I mean, 4 weeks and do different parts of it, or they may skip. But there's really useful stuff, and the guys are excellent carpenters. And if you want to improve your craft or see how things are done in other places, it's a great show to watch. So I was looking through the stuff, and they happen to have one on how to perform a whole house energy audit. So we'll look at that.
Work for you, so we can talk about what we should prioritize.
This thing
I'll
doesn't
tell
go
you
back
right now, your biggest point of heat loss. Hey Kevin, how you doing? All right. Well, the first thing we do in an energy audit is we start with all the things that use energy in the house. So we start with the appliances upstairs. We start with the lighting, make sure everything's running efficiently, and we also check out the heating system, the water heater.
Just cut one of the lights and see how that works.
Well, the lights
Is that better?
upstairs are mostly CFL, which is good, low water usage, and the appliances are all Energy Star rated, so those look great, perfect. So now we just need to check out the heating system.
So we've got a hot water heater right here. What are your thoughts? What have you found?
Well, it's about 5 years old. It's a standard atmospheric.
So remember I told you the first day that I was going to gloss these? So get used to it. I used to do it kind of casually, but I'm going to do it more often because there's just things. So for instance, right off, you notice they're in a basement and they have a furnace system. So in New England, and maybe I haven't lived in northern Midwest, Minnesota, Michigan, those places, but we don't have basements like this here, and we don't have big furnaces. You know, we have a air-to-air heat furnace in our attic maybe, or in a little room. But sometimes in New England they have boilers, and they'll run all the hot things in the house off a boiler. So just, you know, the stuff that's not applicable, I'll try to show you, but a lot of it still is.
50-gallon tank.
Yeah.
So it looks pretty reasonably efficient.
Yeah, 5 years old is not too bad, but what about this beast right here?
Well, that's about a 20-year-old steam boiler.
All right, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the reason these are so inefficient is because the water has to get up to at least 212 degrees in order to create steam.
Yeah.
Whereas forced hot water only needs to get up to about 180 degrees.
Right. So generally the steam systems are less efficient generically, but this one's old. I mean, specifically, how inefficient do you think this is?
Well, we're about to find out.
So everybody know what HVAC means? Heating, ventilation, air conditioning. It's the third component, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC in most homes. And so when you do it, when an audit's done, obviously some of it's HVAC because they're looking for energy savings. So that's what he's starting out in the basement, looking at the heating system.
We're going to do a combustion safety test to make sure that everything is running efficiently.
All right, let's test it.
Using
So
a
we're gonna
combustion
look, we're gonna
analyzer
skip over
to
this.
measure the, now I'm going to drill a hole in the plume to measure.
Chris, test results are in. What'd you find?
Well, it's
We'll
running
look at those
safely,
particular
it's drafting
factors
properly.
later.
Efficiency-wise, it's running at about 83% right now.
How do you feel about 83%?
That's pretty reasonable. 80 to 85% is the standard range for an atmospheric steam boiler, just like this.
All right, so we're right in the middle, but we could get a more efficient system in here, right?
Right, if you converted the system to a high-efficiency hot water boiler, you can get up to 96% efficiency.
So that's gonna come with some cost though, so what do you recommend?
Well, for now, I would leave it as is. Generally, they last about 25 to 30 years, so I would stick with the system for now.
All right, maybe find some other place where we can save some money.
All right, let's go check it out.
So that's what they'll do. They'll talk to the client that way. Like a better heating system would give them more efficiency and would cost less for the energy, whatever they're using, gas in this case, I think, or maybe fuel oil. But then it costs a lot to redo a whole system, right? And the auditor knows the balance, knows the cost of the new things and about what their bills will be. And so he'll say, well, this is what your trade-off's going to be. If you want to go ahead and get this, it'll take you at least 5 years to pay for the change, but then you'll get a lot cheaper bills. And people may say, no, I don't want to do that. That's too much money. Let's just leave it like it is. So there's a constant, in some of these things, there's a constant trade-off.
Let's go upstairs.
So now we're going to evaluate the shell of the house. We want to see how well the house keeps in all that nice conditioned air. Every house leaks to some extent. It's just a matter of where it's coming from and how much air is actually moving.
Okay, so a blower door test, it looks like.
Right, and it's basically a giant fan that depressurizes the entire house.
Yeah.
That's going to exaggerate all the leakage points throughout the house and see how well it keeps in that air.
All right, now we've closed all the windows, we closed the garage door, those types of things, so we're sealed up.
Right.
This is what we're going to do in this room. Couple weeks.
So this is the basement door here.
Mm-hmm.
And you see with my smoke stick how much air is being moved from the basement.
Wow.
So that tells me there's a lot of air coming through the penetrations in the basement, like around the garage door, the rim joist, the vents that are behind the addition.
A lot of leaks down there that we're gonna. Did you know that Mr. Gould DIY ductless mini split?
Sorry. We're going to do the whole blower door later, but you can use it in two ways. You can pressurize the house. In other words, turn the fan so it's facing out and take all the air out, depressurize the house, I mean. And then the house will have a negative pressure and air will come in, the leaks will come in, air will come in the leaks. So then you can take a smoke stick by the window where everything is leaks and it'll blow and you can see it. But you can also pressurize the house too. And then you'll see the leaks, the smoke will go out the leaks. It's not as easy to see, but that's why he was depressurizing the house. So air from the outside was coming in to even the pressure. So it's coming up through the basement with a lot of leaks there. That's what that meant.
It heats, and I mean really heats. Designed to
the current BPI, ANSI BPI 1200 standard.
I think we shifted.
For the past year, we've witnessed
Sorry, I did this.
For the past year, we've witnessed the ridiculous price increase of lumber, which resulted in an almost $40,000 average.
Damn it.
It's the next one
Yeah,
below.
it's the next one.
Back.
on the right.
Just skip the next one. Press.
Go back or forward?
No, go
For the
forward
past
twice.
year-
One more.
So for you, we can talk about what we should prioritize. But I'll tell you right now, your biggest point of heat loss is coming from. I'm also going to use a smoke stick to make sure that the exhaust gas isn't spilling back into the basement. Inside the pipe,
Generically, but this one's old. I mean, specifically,
measure the
Explain that
temperature.
blower
Now I'm
door.
going
No,
to show
someone.
it running safely, it's drafting properly.
recommend.
Well, for now, I would leave it at basically a giant fan that depressurizes the entire house.
Yeah.
That's going to exaggerate all the leakage points throughout the house and see how well it keeps in that
All
air.
right, now we've closed all the windows, we closed the garage door, those types of things, so we're sealed up.
Right.
You really gotta close the fireplace, if there's a fireplace, because all that incoming air should be ashes all over.
So this is the basement door here.
Mm-hmm.
And you see with my smoke stick how much air is being moved from the basement.
Wow.
So that tells me there's a lot of air coming through the penetrations in the basement, like around the garage door, the rim joists, the vents that are behind the addition.
A lot of leaks down there that we're gonna wanna seal up.
Right. So another big point of air leakage is the chimney. And you can see even with the damper closed how much air is being moved. So that means in the winter you're going to be losing a lot of heat through the chimney. So another way we can look for heat loss points around the house is with an infrared camera. And that shows us where the temperature differences are in the outside wall.
Yeah.
So you can see where the window is, where the cooler blue, purple areas are. And then as you move around the room, you see the inside stuff, it's yellow or orange, it's warmer.
All right, and what do you see on the wall?
And the wall itself, you see right next to the window, there's a bay between the studs.
Yeah.
There's plenty of insulation right there. It's a warmer color. But right next to it, there's a cold spot.
So you're saying, you're thinking that we've got, what, full insulation right here in this bay?
Right,
And what, either no insulation or what, poorly installed insulation over here?
exactly.
That's a big temperature difference.
Right, it's about 62 degrees versus about 69, maybe 70 degrees. So it's almost a 10-degree difference between the two bays.
So that's gotta make a big difference in your comfort level.
Definitely will. You can see how sensitive this camera is. You can still see the handprints on the wall. Wow. So another big point of leakage is going to be the pull downstairs to the attic.
Right.
So if we look at it with the infrared camera and with the fan still blowing, we're going to be able to see the cold air being pulled out through the edges.
I mean, I could see the blue, but I could also see wisps as if the wind's blowing right through there.
Well, the fan's still blowing, so you can see it blowing out the cold air.
And the temperature difference?
It's over a 10-degree difference between the inside and out.
Just a big hole right to the second floor.
Right.
Okay, what are you finding up in the attic?
Well, now that we have the floorboards up, we can get a good look at the installation here.
So we've got fiberglass bats in the joist bays, and how deep are these bays?
They're about 6 inches deep, and at the time when the installation was installed, it's probably about 6 inches or an R19 installation bed.
Yeah. What do you think it is now? This
Well,
stuff is pretty far gone.
It's so degraded now and compressed that it's probably around an R8 or 9.
So 19 down to an 8 or 9. And ideally, what would you like it to be?
Well, for new construction code today, it's an R38 or 12 total inches.
So we got a long way to go. And how would you get 12 inches of insulation up here?
Well, first we take out all the old fiberglass because there's so many air gaps in there we can't insulate properly.
Mm-hmm.
We take out all the flooring in the attic, and then we'd add 12 inches across the surface.
So just pile them up until we got to where we needed to be. But they've got a lot of storage up here. What if they wanted to keep using the attic for storage?
Well, then they'd have to build up the frame another 6 inches so that you can fit the insulation underneath.
And then we could put the plywood on top of that. All right.
Right.
Anything else you see up here?
Well, whenever we do any insulation work, we want to make sure that we're air sealing first.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever the air is leaking from the living space, we want to seal that nice and tight, especially around the chimney chase here.
Look at the size of this hole, right?
Right, it's almost a 3-inch gap, and if I shine my flashlight, I can almost see straight down to the basement.
So we've got a chimney of air coming up around the chimney itself.
Right.
How do you seal this?
Well, we use fire-rated flashing as well as fire-rated caulking to seal that nice and tight, and then we can insulate around that.
Okay, now this is a pretty big hole, but we've got smaller holes around here, I'm sure, because I've seen some electrical wires come up, probably a plumbing stack too.
Right, especially where the interior walls meet with the attic, we want to seal those nice and tight with expanding polyurethane. Then we can insulate on top of that.
Okay, so that's sealing, but we've got a gigantic hole right here, although we need it, so we can't have a permanent seal. And it looks like you've got a solution right here.
This is an attic stair cover. It's made of rigid foam board or polyisocyanurate, which is a higher insulation value than fiberglass alone.
Okay,
That's weather stripped around the bottom, so it'll make a nice tight seal.
so when these stairs are up and not in use, this just sits over them like this, and that makes a nice seal, but when you
It
make
does make a
access to
nice
the attic,
seal.
the
It's
stairs
just
come
fiberglass.
down,
It's not gonna
hash
press
them
down on
Right,
that.
we've seen it
stupid.
before, they're
Yeah,
actually
it's
very
stupid.
effective.
Very.
Hey guys, you're almost done?
So those big stairs are a real problem. There's not a good solution to those. In my house, I have just an attic access that you use your own ladder to get up in. What do you guys have in your homes? Pull downs or just
I don't have an attic.
yeah. But on mine, I put plywood and flashing and rigid insulation on top. but I wanted a seal, so I took a, I wanted to clamp down on the weather stripping, so I took a double hung window, the sash clipped it, and you turn it and it pushes the window down. So I figured out a way to do it because these are at right angles. It's not two windows. It took me a long time to figure it out. So I put it, now I can just, both sides, I can pull the thing down from the ladder. And I used to kid the class, I used to read, they'd say, go get a clip. And I looked everywhere, all across the internet, everywhere. Nobody makes those. So I think with this becoming more of an issue, we're every 5 years, we're tightening down houses even more. I think they're really, everybody's got those access things. And I think it's really going to be an issue. I keep telling some of my students they ought to go into business and make these things. Because there's 1 million houses across the country, So anyway, we'll look at, I'll bring my attic. I won't bring the attic in, but I'll bring my door in. We can look at it later. But those big ones, they're just a mess. There's no way to really, that's probably the only thing you can do. It's better than nothing, but
Sweeping the dirt under the rug.
it's kind of a hassle, because when you come up the stairs, you have to push that out of the way.
Yep, we're all done. I found a long list of opportunity for you to increase the overall energy efficiency of your home. But don't worry, I'm going to write up a comprehensive report for you so we can talk about what you should prioritize. But I'll tell you right now, your biggest point of heat loss is coming from your attic. You should insulate and air seal it.
Oh, great. I really appreciate the help that you guys gave me today, and I'm looking forward to reducing my energy bills in the winter.
All right, well, Chris did all the work, so nice job, Chris. Thank you.
A proper energy audit, particularly with a blower door test, is really the greatest way to understand what's going on inside that building. Where is the heating and cooling that you're paying for leaving through the building?
Boy, and there are some great tools out there right now. I mean, infrared technology, how powerful is that?
It's really a great tool for us to really understand who's hot and who's not. But it actually lets you see inside the walls, and that's really great. Now, once you have that blower door test, it's going to make this infrared cam work.
I love those
And
accents.
also make the smokestack work better, because you're under negative pressure, you'll actually see.
This guy here is a really great carpenter.
Wasn't it amazing how much air was coming through his basement door?
It is amazing, but that's when you want to start tightening up those leaks. Air seal the house and then insulate.
Yeah.
Air sealing simply caulking foam for the big guys.
Yeah, we've got some
Rigid
more
foam,
modern
fiberglass
things.
insulation. It makes a huge
When we get to that unit,
If you have
we've
a
got bunch of
fireplace,
stuff
they have
now.
these different sized balloons that you can use. Stick it inside your flue, blow it up, and it'll conform to the flue size and stop a lot of the air.
A chimney is a really big hole in the house.
Yeah, negative pressure.
How do you get an energy audit?
What is that?
Well, in most states, the programs that are run by the utilities, so it starts with a call to that program. They're oftentimes free. The great thing is you get that list back, it's prioritized, and sometimes the remediation work is actually subsidized as well.
No brainer.
It's a great place to start. All right, well, until next time, I'm Kevin O'Connor.
I'm Tom Silver.
I'm Richard Stewart, and I'm Roger Cook.
For Ask This Old
Because
House.
you just cut into the hay and what's it called, the friction pins.
So, yeah, they may, we had that big infrastructure bill go through Congress last year, and the money's just now being distributed. And part of it is for energy efficiency. So the federal government actually may subsidize the audits and the work following up. Now, I'll look into that and see. Government subsidizing, whether it's solar or whatever, comes and goes. It'll be really good for 5 years and it'll drop out for a while. But because of that infrastructure bill, they're really hot on it. So I'll see.
Sounds like it's time to get to audit.
Sounds like a lot easier work on your back.
These overlap a
This
little
clever
bit.
Wi-Fi hack allows you to get super fast Wi-Fi in 6 seconds. Do you know what the extra button on?
Good sense. In a typical home, 50 to 60% of the energy used goes for heating, cooling, and lighting, and often much of that is wasted. Well, local utility companies, like the one here in Connecticut where I live, are trying to change that by offering homeowners home energy audits to help them find out where that energy is being lost and what to do about it. Chris Ellert, the manager of residential energy services for the United Illuminating Company, or UI, explains why.
UI provides programs like Home Energy Solutions funded through the Connecticut Energy Efficiency Fund
to help consumers lower their energy costs.
One of the key parts of these audits is the blower door test. First, this insert is placed in the door opening and snapped into the fireplace dampers, windows, doors. They will also advise homeowners on how and where to apply exterior caulk and how to adjust door fund. Includes an inspection of existing attic insulation. 20% of the energy used in the average home is for lighting. Replacing incandescent bulbs with compact fluorescents.
See how old this is? Compact
Fluorescents, they're not even LED.
They don't
What's
make
more, newer compact fluorescents come in a variety of styles.
Number of compact, if you were to upgrade into an Energy Star model, you reduce your water usage by 50%. Through our program, we do offer consumers rebates to encourage them to replace their old and efficient models to Energy Star models. If they act within 45 days of our.
So yeah, so one of the things you audit is the appliances people use. And there's quite a difference in the appliances. They in the last 10, 15 years, they've started making more efficient appliances. But washers now are much more efficient. That's mostly water use, but still. Things going electric, you know, we'll talk about all that stuff. We're going to talk about energy efficient appliances, water heaters and heat pumps and that kind of stuff. So those two are kind of old, so I don't know if they're still, you know, they're talking about their local utilities subsidizing these audits and things. So I'll check and see what's going on around here, whether they do it here. Okay.
Do y'all mind if I close this door?
No, go ahead. So let's go till 7 and then take a break. Can you do that? Okay. So let's look at some of these handouts. So start with the one with the black cover. So I punched holes in all these. So like I said, if you get a free reminder, you can keep them all together. And this one, when you copy these little, you know, like you have, when you copy like that, the copies turn out sideways. So the book you're getting is from Saturn, the publisher, and they have a bunch of books, and they have one on just energy auditing, which we used to use when we had that class. So I've taken stuff from here and put it in this class. But if you're interested in more detail, and I've pulled some of the information for this handout. So look on the first page, 16 at the bottom, right? You see where the page is numbered? So it says energy audit, categories of service, visual inspection, diagnostic testing, numerical analysis. So visual inspection is just going around and looking at, you know, the attic insulation, or BPI looks at the outside of your house, make sure there's not, the water's not coming up to your siding or into your basement, and make sure it's sloped. So there's a lot of visual inspection. The diagnostic testing is what we look at, blower door and infrared. We have an infrared gun we look at to look at some of these walls. Boy, somehow I lost a battery to my second infrared gun, and it's a FLIR gun. And I knew FLIR just moved in a couple years ago over next to where Walmart used to be. What's that shopping center called? Who knows?
Target?
Yeah, where Target is, yeah. So they're just up Hollister from that. And I couldn't get in the hell of these signs that says we no longer have a lobby, you have to get an appointment. And then I looked, and Teledyne had bought them out, and Teledyne's a big defense contractor. So FLIR's gone defense. So I don't know if I ever get, you know, that one repaired. They'll probably have to do a background check on me to get in the door. God. Weird crap, isn't it? Might be easier just to go out and buy it. They were expensive. They probably come down in price. When I when I started this kind of class, it was like 10 years ago, and they were pretty expensive, so I never thought about getting another one. So diagnostic testing and numerical analysis is things like, they'll look at your, well, there's numerical analysis with all the diagnostic tools. They'll also look at your utility bills, right? And they can tell pretty much by the size of your house and the orientation what those bills should be like, and if yours are way higher. Does anybody pay their gas bill themselves here, or someone else pays it?
It's double, right?
Yeah.
That I usually pay 45, it was like 95.
Yeah, double and plus.
Yeah.
So, utilities have all kinds of excuses. You never get the straight skinny on what's going on, It's like gas companies, right? Your oil companies, they lie all the time. They said it was that we get most of our gas from out of state, and there's pipeline issues, and I'm not sure, but part of it might be because we're going over to electric pretty fast in California, and so they're going to have less customers, so they may be hedging their bets ahead of time. But it's pretty outrageous, so it's another reason to go more electrical. Oh, they also said we sent gas to Ukraine, or not Ukraine, but Europe, probably Ukraine too, because Europe was getting gas from Russia, and then they all flexed their NATO muscles and said we're not going to buy gas from Russia, and Russia turned off the tap altogether. So none of the European countries have gas from Russia now, and it's freaking cold over there. So a lot of countries in the world have been shipping gas over, including us. So that may be another reason why gas is high. That's actually a good reason, though, because at least we're keeping people alive. But I don't think gas is going to be cheaper. Another thing I noticed, I'll just say these things off the cuff because I don't know if I'll remember them later, but there's a lot more people paying attention to the air quality around gas stoves. They never used to do that. Gas was always a fairly clean burning fuel, and there was never much consideration, except these auditors from BPI, when they started testing for CO, they found out that if your pans actually dip down and hit the flame, that incompletes the combustion, and you can get CO from that. But that's not the gas itself, that's the way you're using it, And you have those trivets on there, and that keeps the pans above the flame. So they're designed not to touch the flame, but sometimes the flame gets higher when it gets old. And we'll talk about that because that's really important, that combustion air problem. But I hear people talking about gas as not being the greatest cooking source because it does put out toxic gases. Not a lot, or we'd all be dead because we've all been using gas our whole lives. But still, it's the first I've heard people talk about that. So, maybe there's methane. It's methane gas that's burned. Maybe it burns incompletely, and there's methane around, or maybe some CO gets out anyway in just a normal combustion. I don't know, but that's become an issue. But the state's going toward electrical appliances, including electrical ranges, so it won't be a problem when they get there. But in the meantime, it might be an issue. So this, on the next page, 18 and 19, it shows an exterior inspection. And sometimes you can see things that you can see from both sides, like windows, you can see better from the outside sometimes. You can see water sometimes in a window, from the outside, you can see stains. In that film, the blower door, they could see the smoke from the inside coming in the window, so both ways. Foundations are an issue. And then look at that, evaluate roof and window shading from trees and awnings. So what happens if your house is really shaded? It's got these old trees, it's an old house, and there's no sunlight coming in the windows. What does that mean? What does that cause?
Cold.
Yeah, the house is gonna be colder, right? Doesn't have that sun, so you're gonna use more heat to make it comfortable. So they might suggest, hey, if you guys thought about trimming those trees or planting trees that the leaves drop in the winter and come back in the summer, deciduous trees. We'll talk about all that, but that's the kind of thing they might look at. Or if they have solar and there's trees in the way, they could say, you really should cut those back, because I can tell it's affecting the solar. So there's quite a bit of stuff on the outside that they can look at. Does anybody here have a fireplace in their home?
Mm-hmm.
And what does it burn, Ethan?
Natural gas?
Natural gas. Anybody have a wood burning fireplace? Do you use it?
Yeah.
Great. I know it's the greatest fire, isn't it? There's nothing like it, but yeah, they really don't like those, but they can't. Everyone's got them, so. Those have been a problem in a lot of places. I lived in Boulder once for a while. And Boulder's up, there's a plain and then it hits the Rockies, and Boulder's right where it hits, so a lot of air can go up there. And Missoula had the same problem because it's kind of a canyon, box canyon, and when air gets in there, it doesn't go anywhere. So the population started getting big enough where all the fireplaces were adding up to a lot of, stuff in the air, and they had to curtail them. They say you can only burn fireplaces 3 days a week, or things like that. It's amazing, huh? Sometimes they take in these exterior inspections, they'll draw, like on the right here, they'll draw a picture of the house, a floor plan, just to get dimensions. So if they have to do some figuring that requires square footage or, cubic footage, they'll have those numbers, ahead of time. And then they go to the interior. We saw some of the stuff they did. We'll talk more about this. We're going to go into more detail in actually plugging the leaks and sealing the building shell. We'll do a chapter on the unit on diagnosing with the blower door and stuff, and then we'll move into, dealing with problems that we've discovered. But the systems, heating systems and cooling systems, all, people take their heating systems for granted, like a gas hot water heater, right? Whoever thinks about that? Has everybody been to their hot water closet and looked at their hot water heater? Sometimes you live in a house, you don't even, think it's there. But if you have too many venting appliances, like a dryer and a fan in the bathroom that exhausts the humidity, if you have all that on at once, if you have enough appliances and overhead over your stove, a kitchen vent hood, you can actually make a negative pressure in your house, because you're doing the same thing a blower door does. You're sucking all the air out of those things. If you have enough of them, it's going to pull air down the hot water heater. It's going to pull the flame back. And that's going to, if it's, and hot water heaters used to be more open than they are now. Now they've got a little bit of cover. But that's what backdrafting is. They can actually pull flame out of the boiling part of your hot water heater and light anything that's lightable next to it. So you can actually cause fires by having all the venting on at the same time. So one of these companies, BPI, which we'll talk about, they go in and they do these, they turn all your stuff on, they measure all the venting pressure, and they compare it to, what's needed. And it's really great. People never used to think about that, but we don't have the same problems in Santa Barbara or Southern California, because we leave the windows open. So we always have the windows kind of as a buffer. They vent both ways for us, But if you live in San Ynez Valley, Ojai, the whole northern part of the United States, all back east, you got to worry about this stuff a lot more. Your houses are sealed, and any toxins you have are going to make more of a dent on people in here. Health and safety inspection. So, I mean, they'll go in, they're in your house, right? So they figure it's kind of a bonus. They think, well, while I'm here looking at this, I'm gonna just gaze around and see if there's any actual things that are threatening you physically, you know, like beams that aren't secure or, you know, whatever. They do that. They here interview the homeowner about the family's health. That's an interesting thing, huh? So if the customer says, oh yeah, my kids all have asthma or they're having respiratory problems, well, that might be something that you can flag and correct in the house. So a lot of ailments and diseases come from things that aren't right in the house. So these tests are good just for, you know, the health and comfort of people, not to mention, you know, helping out with global warming and keeping the energy bills down. Look on 22, there's diagnostic testing. And then on the top of 23, there's the list of it. Blower door testing we'll do, duct air testing we'll do, combustion safety and efficiency testing. We can't do that here. We'll look at some videos, but we will create some carbon monoxide with putting a pan on a flame. We have a carbon monoxide meter, and you just put that flame like a camping stove. You put the pan right on the flame, and that meter jumps. Fortunately, when you're camping, you're out in the air, so it's not a big problem. It's never a problem if you're outside and it's a breeze. So I had a student once, we did an infrared, we did a whole house audit at his house on a weekend. He volunteered. And his wife was a chef, and she had one of these big, I forget the name of it, what are those big stoves? Viking? No, Viking?
Yeah.
Viking, yeah, big giant gas stove. And I said, well, turn on the burners. Would you turn them on? And the burners were just, you know, huge. It's like, and I said, wow. He said, well, my wife really likes to cook, and you know, they like the hot flame for, you know, stir fry or whatever. And I had him put a pan down and turn it on, and I put the meter next to it, and the meter just went, you know, the CO was just there. And he said, well, what can I do? You know, I said, I can't divorce my wife, you know, I like her. So I said, well, make sure your vent, you know, your hood vent is really strong, and keep it on. And you should open a window. If the weather's not too bad, just make sure there's cross ventilation. You can probably be okay. But yeah, you got to worry about that stuff. Infrared scanning, we'll do that. Appliance consumption testing, we may do that. We have, you know, we don't have too many appliances here to test, but you know, they have these little things that you put in, and you can put in, then you put the plug, you put them in the outlet, and then you put the refrigerator plug into them, and they tell you how much energy the refrigerator is using over time. Those are really great. And then HVAC diagnosis, which is what those guys started to do. They go up and they look at your, you know, it might be a simple thing. You may have that HVAC machine with vents that aren't, you know, whenever you have a vent, it always has to be facing up, right? Because the gas rises. And sometimes they'll start up, and then by the end, before they go out the house, they're going horizontally. Occasionally they're going down, which means the gas doesn't really go out. So, you know, little things like that, they look at those kind of things too. We're getting away from forced air systems with a lot of ducting that has to be balanced, and people put additions on and imbalance the thing. We're going into heat pumps, which we'll talk about. Much simpler technology. You don't need all the same kind of ducting, and so I think HVAC is going through a revolution. It's going to get a lot simpler. Anybody here do HVAC or have families that work in HVAC? You know where they really need, whenever I get HVAC people and they go, hey, do any of your guys want to do sheet metal work? Because that's a dying art. Nobody's doing sheet metal now. And that's what HVAC's about. You know, those big, all the ducting and the big plenums and things are all out of sheet metal. Nobody knows how to work with it anymore. Okay. Okay, now go to 24. Or 25, it says base load versus seasonal use. Now, you don't hear that a lot here. in utility reports, if you get information from utility companies, they're always sending out stuff to educate you. We don't have a problem, because look at these graphs on 25 there. The one on the left, seasonal dominated. That means there's a lot of seasonal weather. That means the place in the north was cold, or a place where maybe it's hot. And so in those seasons, that peaks there because you got things like air conditioners or heaters that do a lot, and then in the other season they're not there. The one on the right, the seasonal energy use is less. That's more like here. And your base load is, see what it says on there? Water heating, refrigeration, clothes dryer, lighting. So all those things you use all the time. It doesn't matter the season, right? You're not going to turn off your lights because it's summer. So that thing you use all year round is called the base load energy. And the seasonal energy is the stuff that you just use to combat seasonal issues. So sometimes that comes into their figuring. So it's just a concept that you should know about. On page 27, it shows a comparison of your different appliances and how much energy they use. So if you look at kilowatt hours, even though a lot of our stuff is gas, but look at how much heating is. It's huge, right? It's your big, and cooling can be pretty big too, but it's still not quite what. And water heating is almost, well, more than cooling in some areas. So water heating, here our heating and cooling bills aren't really big, but our water heating could be big because that's just, you water heat to take baths and wash your dishes. And so refrigerator, not quite as much energy. Lighting's up there though, but now we've got LEDs. That's a really great thing. It's really cutting that back. Clothes dryer uses a lot. They're trying to make those more efficient all the time. They do work a lot. Energy Star, you saw that on there. They have a home rating system. That's where they started, but they ended up doing rating appliances for the government. And so if you go to, well, you can't go to Sears anymore, but it was really easy to see it at Sears. You'd go there and you'd say, well, I want to see an Energy Star. And they would take you to a place where they have the sticker. And the better appliances were all Energy Star, which meant they were more efficient with energy, quite a bit. So, I mean, all places carry those. So when you look for appliances, whether it's refrigerators or anything, make sure it's Energy Star and you'll be ahead of the game. It costs a little more. Now I don't know that it costs a lot more because they've sort of, it's been so important, it's kind of mixed with everything now. So I don't think the prices are too bad. Okay, go to the next page. I'm getting ready for a break. And there's a thing about carbon footprint, which is going to talk about CO2. But look at that table on page 33 at the top where it says carbon emissions of various fuels. So you can probably, I would take the therms to measure heat. I would take that right thing because it's easier to compare. But natural gas, you need 12 pounds of natural gas. For 12 pounds of natural gas that you're burning, you're going to burn 14 pounds of propane. So propane is not quite as efficient. Fuel oil, which is what they use in northern climes, New England and the north uses a lot of that, 19 pounds. So that's much less efficient. Wood's even less efficient, 21. Most people don't use wood to heat. They use it kind of for atmospheric things.
I just like burning.
Yeah, it's great. It's so great for that. And then gas that's electricity that's made from gas, which is all of our electricity here. No, we use oil too. It's 39 pounds. So it's using a lot of resource compared to natural gas, which was 12. Coal's even worse, 69. So that's kind of a comparison of which fossil fuels use the most, take the most, same amount of energy, how much fossil fuels take. Kind of interesting comparison. Europe has a lot of coal, unfortunately. Germany, a lot of those places, Czechoslovakia, have a lot of coal, and it's real cheap. Although Germany years ago decided not to use it anymore, and they're going for solar. They might have gone back on that because of this Ukraine thing. I mean, a lot of Europeans use energy they didn't want to. But hopefully that won't last forever. So, let's take a break, and then we'll go through some more of this stuff. I know it's plodding, but and then we'll see some YouTube, and then we'll go home. So, refresh yourself for a few minutes. Back quarter after 20 after. Anybody get the coffee going tonight? Doesn't look like it, huh?
That looks like coffee from, that'd be coffee from Tuesday, from any time, because they didn't meet
And they're
here.
holding him. Like, why do we base decisions off this? Patrick, my parents have, I think it's an older model of like a energy efficient dryer and washer. And the dryer, like, if you don't, if it's on like the energy saver mode,
They don't
like
dry, it takes
it
forever.
comes out like damp. It like doesn't use heat,
Yeah.
so it like comes out like damp, and then you have to do it again. So it's like
I know.
then you do it twice.
When we were when I was looking for appliances for this tiny home,
Yeah.
Everything to save room, right? So they make washers and dryers in the same machine.
Yeah.
Is that what yours is?
No.
Yeah, but they make them in the same machine, and they're electrical. And everybody I called said, oh, they just work like crap. Don't get those.
I've heard that too.
So we decided not to do any of the appliances, and that when we were going to sell, I don't know what the hell we're doing with it now, but we were going to just let people pick out their own, because
Yeah.
everybody's got appliances are really people really have opinions about them. And so if you get them the wrong one, they go, oh, I really like that tiny home, but I hate the appliances.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll get better, and I'm sure they're better than
They're
now
getting
than the
better all
ones.
time.
But
If you go to, I guess in the green building class we go to, did you take that?
Yeah.
And we went to Ferguson's, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And so they had the Miele, the German company. We were looking at dryers
Mhm.
and that. They have some really good ones. They're costly because they're kind of top of the line. But people have been encouraged to use outside lines, the clotheslines. But it doesn't fit every lifestyle. It's convenient for people who stay at home a lot. Can do it
And have the space.
and have the space. Yeah, you got to have a yard.
Yeah.
In Japan they have my wife's from Japan. They have every place has just outside the window, so they're like on the building. So you just lean out your window and you pull things, and the trains go by and get everything all dirty. But they have no space at all there, So everything's got to be piggybacked like that.
I've seen more, like, I had a roommate over the summer who had one of these, and I saw one, like, online somewhere. He's like, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess, like, an unfolding, like, structure of like, boards to, like,
wooden thing?
It was made of, like, plastic. And
Oh, okay.
metal, but, like, just
Yeah.
things to hang.
Yeah.
Dry.
Yeah, racks, I think they call them.
Yeah.
Drying racks. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen those.
My mom used to have just just for, like, delicates, like a square of, like, metal.
Yeah, women have a lot of the times because their stuff is finicky. They can't.
Yeah. And
Dry
so
it
you
or
have to do
whatever.
it a specific way, otherwise it'll get ruined.
Yeah. My mom had that too.
I've ruined a couple of my girlfriend's shirts just throwing them in the dryer.
Always gotta check the tag.
They just rip.
There's an ad on TV where a guy put his pink T-shirt or red T-shirt in the wash. The
Yeah.
whole family stuff is just really.
Yeah.
That's great. I've done that.
Yeah, right? Like in the 40s.
Is it?
I don't know about right now, but on Tuesday night.
Oh,
it was
Tuesday
like
was
freezing.
freezing.
Like we got out of class and it was like 15 degrees
Last
cold
night?
outside.
Tuesday.
On Tuesday night.
Yeah, it's weird. Some nights it'll be freezing, some nights it'll be fairly warm.
This one's all right. It's 50,
Yeah.
53.
This one's all right. Where you can walk out without a jacket.
Yeah.
It was 45 when we left class
Oh,
on Tuesday.
completely.
I did start up my heater pretty quick.
Let's see. Back when I went up to Spokane to visit my girlfriend when she was going to school in Spokane, I'd go there and it was cold. It was not cold, and I would freeze my ass off. I'd come back here and somehow at 5 in the morning, it's cold.
Yeah, it gets pretty cold up in the foothills where I'm at. That gets pretty cold.
Yeah.
Where is Spokane?
Spokane's up eastern Washington. So when you go up there, it's cold, but it's not like rainy cold.
Yeah, it's dry in the east.
Dry, yeah, like
Drier, yeah.
yeah.
Here it's windy and cold. 'Cause we got
Oh, we're
It's
not
windy,
used to it
cold,
either,
and
right?
it's windy,
Yeah.
cold, and humid.
It's because we got the mountain and then we got the ocean breeze too.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's dry and Santa Ana winds cause even worse fires. We just get-
Right now it's been good because
Oh,
the
yeah.
fire has been, it's low.
Yeah. It's lovely. First year in what, 6 years that we haven't had high fire
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I know.
danger. That's
This rain's really doing it for us.
Yeah.
yes. Oh, I mean, it is only just starting.
I wouldn't mind a fire right now. I hope my client's house burns down.
What, so that you can prove that the fire retardant plywood doesn't
If
work?
that's the only thing standing, I'll be so happy. And the fiberglass door.
Yeah, but we're getting all this rain and a ton of stuff's gonna grow, and then summer comes around, it's all gonna die.
I remember in NorCal when the fires, like the year that the fires first started, it was like my
Yeah.
sophomore year of high school, and like
Yeah.
everybody panicking, and like classes let out for like a week because
Yeah.
of the air quality.
Oh,
And then, like-
In Paradise?
Dude, 2 weeks for San
Paradise Fire?
Marcos.
No, we were
Yeah.
out the whole time. Santa Barbara was like we were out. I was wearing a mask and
Yeah,
like
respirator
winter
mask.
break.
Dude, oh my
I
god.
remember
I was like,
that.
that was during the period of my life that I hung out with Corey Becker. That's not good, but
But the fires weren't, Northern California fires are newer than the ones here. We've had them for a long time, right?
Yeah, well, that makes it, you guys are, the climate's hotter down
I think it's the
Yeah.
same one the sophomore year. It was the Thomas Fire, I think.
I don't remember.
Thomas
the
Fire was the
name.
year before the Paradise Fire.
What about the
Paradise
holiday
So
fire?
I was a sophomore during Thomas Fire.
Maybe they called it the Thomas Fire. Was that the holiday fire also?
No. Are you
Thomas-
thinking of the holiday
Thomas
fire
Fire
that
was Sep-
mixed with the
27.
August Complex Fire?
The holiday fire was on Cathedral Oaks and,
Yeah, that's.
you know.
But the bigger one was
Patterson.
the Thomas Fire.
Thomas Fire
Thomas
was
Fire
dude,
was on Cedar, yeah.
Thomas Fire
And it started in LA, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Thomas Fire was the one that was about to run down the 154.
Yeah,
And I know that.
Yeah, we were all at school when it happened.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was 27.
I remember the atmosphere was shit. Everyone was wearing masks. I remember I was walking on stage. This guy like took his mask off, had a cigarette, and then put it down. Like, dude, just take it off already. You're inhaling ashes and smoke. Like, come on.
Yeah, the year after the Thomas Fire was the Woolsey Fire, which is down south, in like all of like Agora, Calabasas, Malibu.
Yeah.
And then that was going on the same time as the Paradise Fire, which killed like 2 people in NorCal.
I remember 2020, we had a lot of fires. We had a lot of fires in 2020, right?
I can't remember a time when we didn't have a fire, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna say yes.
So I remember it was also when Australia was on fire, so I'm pretty sure that was 2020.
Yeah, it was.
And everyone was talking about how Australia was on fire. And meanwhile, California was just completely on fire.
You said like, fire stars and everything.
My neighbor literally said, "Hey, did you hear that Australia's on fire?" I'm like, "Did you look outside?"
I remember leaving class for the Thomas Fire, and I was like, "Oh, that's near my house," because I could see the smoke. I was like, oh, shit.
I think someone hit the doomsday button for 2020 and then immediately hit reset.
Control Z, Control Z.
Killer bees, killer disease, lots of fires.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah.
Killer bees. Did they ever come?
There was only like a few, like, there's only like,
Any bee will kill me. I'm allergic. Yeah, I was roofing one time and I took my glove off and I felt like something here and I swatted it as a bee in my hand. Fell.
No, see, I had never been stung by a bee until like 5 months ago. And so, as soon as I got
Same as getting shot with a BB gun.
yeah, pretty much. But the pain kind of grew.
No, just say that's like I don't know.
Well, it's the same as getting shot by a BB gun from point blank.
This guy goes airsoft. But then, like, I remember I stepped on a snare one time.
I've done airsoft, paintball. Oh, BB guns are terrifying. My grandpa had BB gun.
Well,
BB guns is what, like.
Again,
That's what kills
here's
you.
No, BB gun, a BB gun and an airsoft would hurt way more than fucking B.
Really?
A B doesn't hurt as bad as
Depends on where you get stuck. I'd say depends on where you get stuck. Well,
They got
behind,
stuck
back of your hand,
stuck on
back
my
of your
neck.
foot, neck.
the neck, you're right.
Yeah, I
That
was
seems like
walking.
that would hurt a lot.
Yeah, it hurt, but like not as much as getting shot by a BB gun.
I mean, we can compare it.
Yeah. You wanna
I don't have it.
You wanna do a test of
Have
it?
you ever tried to get something numbed?
Numb?
Yeah.
Ice?
No, like a syringe numbed, so they inject the numbing solution.
I'm not ice, man, yeah.
So it's it actually feels a lot like a these things, but I've had this side of my mouth numbed because they had to remove something in my mouth. I had this finger numbed, not on my teeth. It was a gum that it was not separating because of my teeth were going in. And my finger got numbed and my tooth.
So your whole right side got numb?
No, no, it's just these are two separate accounts. But this hurt like this didn't feel like shit. I was like, okay, fine. I mean, but it's a really bad stinging sensation. Doctor says, okay, you might feel a lot of pain, might sting a lot, so just be ready. I'm like, I'm not gonna feel shit.
When I got my wisdom teeth out, my doctor, he was like a full bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So he numbed me out and just like, I could feel him crying on me. I was like, Jesus Christ, dude.
Well, you were awake.
I was awake, but they were like, one, count to 10, and I was like, one, and then I was out. And I was like, what the hell?
When I had surgery, let's see, 1, 2. No, I had surgery a year ago. I remember because it knocked me out of Patrick's class for like a few weeks. They usually do the countdown at the end.
Yeah, I never made it.
He said, okay, count. That's all I remember. Yeah. I heard
I was trying, I was like,
turn on.
Okay, let's start again.
Your wisdom teeth is no?
I don't have one.
My jaw,
You're involved.
Go to
my
the
jaw has enough space to have
Really,
it.
so then his
go to the
teeth
building
really.
performance. It's the second handout. We're gonna talk about them later, but go past the first page, and then there's a envelope field guide, which is what their lowest audit is. And we'll talk about this more in detail, but so there's health and safety. We talked that sometimes they do that. Look for fire hazards too. Combustion safety test, that's a big part of what they do. We'll go over that later. It's a pretty interesting thing. CO testing. Infiltration evaluation, I guess that's leaks. And they use blower door. Then they look at your insulation. So that's what that particular company does on that type of envelope audit. And then go to the next page. We'll just sort of go through some of these fast. This was the U.S. Department of Energy. This was on the internet, and it was a do-it-yourself home energy audit. And so the first one's locating air leaks, electrical outlets. So they realized that the electrical outlets leak because, there's gaps around them, and sometimes the insulation's not real good. So there's kind of almost a chute to the outside, and they started making those little rubber gaskets. You ever see those? They're not big anymore, but they used to give them away, like the lumberyard would give them away and things, but now they're, which is weird because they're really effective. So we'll find out what happened to those. Same thing with switch plates. Window frames are always leaky. Sometimes you can do something about it. Sometimes you can't replace the windows, but a lot of these, all new manufactured things are better made. Windows are better made, so you're automatically replacing windows will improve it, but they're very expensive too, especially now. And so there are some things you can do short of changing the windows. We'll look at that later, but they look at that. They look at baseboards to see if there's any. You can feel cool come in above the baseboard. These baseboards are kind of different because these were wood baseboards. When we do our door test, we could test them. But I don't think these will show anything. Weather stripping around the doors, fireplace dampers, attic hatches, that kind of thing. Then they look at insulation on the next page. And now that we can get inside the wall with an infrared camera, we can check all the insulation. And next week, we're going to talk about the proper way of insulating. They've learned a lot in the last 10 years on mistakes we've all been making on insulation. And one of the ways they found it was doing infrared and looking at houses that they thought had been done well. And then they saw that it was pretty shoddy, the workmanship. There were gaps all over. And then when they analyzed it scientifically, they found out that those gaps, they say, well, a couple inches to the top, that's not a big deal. So sometimes those will negate the whole value of the insulation below it in that whole bay. It's like you have nothing. So it's we'll go into all that, but it's pretty interesting. But that's one way they can check it now. These infrared guns, obviously the heating, cooling equipment, lighting. So a lot with lighting in terms of energy, like there's the light bulb itself, but then there's switches, dimmers, right? So you dim the light, don't use as much as you might otherwise need. There's outside lights that go on, security lights that go on, motion detecting lights. I've got one in my closet. I used to bring my classes to my house. I probably the green one. I have a lot of stuff that I teach. So, but a closet, the light goes on when I come in. It's a walk-in closet because of my motion. And then when I go, as soon as it doesn't detect any motion, it shuts off. So you don't. When they take it out of the hands of the homeowner, it's often good because homeowners get pretty sloppy and lazy and forget things. So yeah.
Do people ever go around with like a thermal camera before they put the drywall up when it's just insulation, look at the gaps that way?
No, not that I know of.
Because I feel like if you see like where it is, you can kind of just mark it and like note to fill it in there before you put the drywall on.
Yeah, I mean the
Would that give you an accurate result if you were?
Well, no. See, the only thing between if you don't have the drywall on, then you've got the framing, and then you've got maybe Tyvek. No, you'd have sheathing here. Some places you might have the Tyvek, but you have sheathing. Then you have the Tyvek, and the Tyvek will keep wind out of it and water. It won't keep air that will come in.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have another field trip to your house?
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah, we might do it in this class because who knows when I'll do. I think I'm going to do 122 one more time, but yeah, we may do it. And then you have siding, right? So the air can blow in, and it's usually stopped on the inside. Like in colder climates, they'll put a vapor barrier right against the inside wall, inside the sheetrock, and that's airtight and draft can't come in. But here we don't do that. So, it's controversial what we can do in a place like Santa Barbara or Southern Cal. A lot of times they say, and we'll talk about this too, because this is part of the ceiling unit we do. Putting drywall and putting, sometimes drywall is not put right on the floor. It's raised a little bit, so if the house isn't square, you can get them all in. And sometimes that'll create a leak at the bottom. But if they put, if it's out a little bit for whatever reason, the air can go under the baseboard up in the wall. So they will put caulking on that drywall at the bottom where it hits that bottom plate and it can seal. So that's the recommended thing for this place. So it wouldn't make much sense to do it before before it was put on. It's a good idea though. What you could do though is, you could look at it for penetrations like plumbers, because they usually make a mess.
Right.
And then you could patch that from the inside. That's something you could do. But again, the plumbing things are often done after the drywall is on, and so the drywall has a big hole. And so they usually stop that infiltration on the drywall side of the plumbing. And we'll look a lot at that because we have a whole unit on how to there's all kinds of ways of how to easily patch those things. There's all kinds of products and stuff that you use. Skip this, see where it says homepage. I think that's the third handout. Go to the back of that one that says homepage. It should say audit sequence on the top. Yeah.
Huh?
Go to the back.
There we go. Yeah, that's what it's called.
You got it?
Yeah.
Back to the first.
So,
Back to the first.
so when I made this audit class 10 years ago, we wanted to make an audit. I wanted the class to create an audit themselves so they really figure out how it works. So that's a lot of the stuff's about that, so I debated whether to include it in this pack for us because we're not going into quite that depth. But still, it's a good thing. I mean, you may end up, you could do an audit company on your own. You don't have to work for BPI or HERS or any of these other companies. You saw a lot of those in the movie. They were companies that the utility subbed out to do a lot of that work. So that happens too, but they're still private companies. So you could do that too. So if you ever decide to go into that, which is a growing thing because as the code gets stronger and we're trying to save more and more energy, then auditing becomes more and more important. It's not going to get less important. And so if people want to do something that's not quite building and deals with some numbers, but requires a knowledge of construction, this is the kind of thing you might want to look at. Anyway, so there's an initial contact, and probably people would contact you, but then you tell them, what you do and what you're going to charge. And then if they say, okay, that's reasonable, then the whole idea with the business is you don't want to waste any time, right? Time is so precious in a business, and it's easy to waste time. Everybody knows that. That's why if any of you work for other people, they're always on your butt for wasting time, right? Because it adds up. So sometimes they're just assholes. Other times they're really trying to, keep their business going, right? So the one thing a lot of these places do is they mail out a survey. So that takes less time, right? They just have a standard survey and they mail it out. We'll look at one of those that we made up. All this stuff's based on other ones, and so they fill out the survey. We'll look at the survey. They send it back to you. Then you take all the information on the survey and you integrate it into your on-site audit file, right? So it'll tell you what to look for. They'll flag a lot of things, and then you can make sure that you look for those when you go. I mean, otherwise it's a waste of time. But it'll save you a lot of time. Some people, you could get there and say, okay, what are your problems? And then they would spend an hour telling you, oh, well, I think it's in this room. And you go nuts. You'd waste so much time. So you get the survey, and the more detailed it is, you get good information. You transfer that to your clipboard that you're going to go to the site, and you know what to look for, and then other things as well. And then you get a lot of data on that first site visit. See on this page here, you confirm the survey data, you take pictures, you perform diagnostic tests, and then sometimes you can do. They have iPads that have the computer programs on them, and you can finish the results and print out and do a printout for the customer. Other times you have to take it back to the office and rework it there, and then you give them a final data sheet, and it says where all the problems are and tries to quantify them and tries to tell you how much this is costing you in terms of energy, if it's a cost thing. And then below that, it'll have what you can do about it. And here's the cost of what you can do, and here's our recommendation on what would be worth it and what wouldn't be worth it. Okay, so that's just an idea. It gives you an idea of this next page. When we were thinking of an audit, we were trying to do a comprehensive audit because this was the same time we were doing the green building class. So green was in the air, And so we realized that we knew people in Santa Barbara and Montecito and even the wealthier areas that money's not a problem, right? So they can pay anything for an audit. And a lot of them are conservation minded, And so like Wendy McCaw, the owner of the News Press, she's pretty conservative politically, but she's also very conservation minded. And, she spends a lot of money on conservation things. She lends money out. So we thought, well, why not integrate that into an audit and ask people, what kind of green interests they have. And then you could skew the audit toward that. And then they'd feel really good. They'd say, oh, yeah, I'm glad you said that because, we want to make sure we do this and that. So that's why there is in this access categories, green interest was something, you won't see that in many audits, but I thought it made sense in this area. Resource conservation, that's pretty obvious. We'll go into that a lot. Site location, cost effectiveness, whether replacement's a good idea, like remember we were looking at that boiler system in the video, and the guy said, well, I wouldn't replace it, it's pretty expensive, and this one's doing 83% efficiency, so let's let it go for a while. There's simple fixes. Sometimes a remodel will take care of it, or if you're going to remodel anyway, you might put those together. Then there's examples of, on the next page, of each of those categories. Simple fixes, attic duct repair, that's really simple. Go up and make sure your ducts are all together. If they're not, put them together. That doesn't take a lot of rocket science. Weatherization is just caulking and weather stripping and just that simple stuff. Painting sometimes can help. Okay. So go to the next page. It says survey categories. You guys keeping up with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So an energy audit still the biggest one for all those reasons. Saving the customer money, making their house comfortable, and helping out with global warming. So that's still a huge one. Water audit's important too, though, especially in drought areas. And there's a lot of problems that people aren't realizing they're wasting so much money on their lawn because they have over fixtures and the wrong fixtures and things. So there's a lot of stuff that can be corrected there, even though it's not an energy thing. And then indoor air quality is one, and water quality is another one. If you're going to do indoor air quality, you might as well do water quality. So that might mean that your water's, if it's from a well or even if it's from a sea, it may not be very palatable, so, or it may not even be healthy. The water in this area is pretty healthy. It comes from either the aqueduct coming down from the north, and Lake Achuma. Now it's all coming from Lake Achuma because it's filled up. And that water's pretty good quality. But sometimes wells can be polluted. They can be near an industrial site. And so that's one thing. Radon's another thing that's mostly air quality, not water quality. But how many people here have water softeners or purifiers? They call them softeners, but the way you soften water is to take the minerals out, the harsh minerals out of it. So it's the same thing as purifying it. Okay, moving on. Yeah, so you may want to divide up your audit into various sites. Obviously, a bathroom's going to have its own issues, and there's a lot of them. Lighting, day lighting, we'll talk about that too. That's the best way to light, but you don't always have that opportunity. Timers and dimmers, they have humidifiers that can turn on your fan when the humidity is above a certain rate, and then it goes off when it's down. That's a great thing because you don't have to touch it. You don't have to turn on the fan and then remember to turn it off. Go to work and leave it on all day. So it does it for you. So those kind of things that get around your, problems with human error are really great. And there's a lot of them now too. Water efficiency, toilets, the state's taking care of that for us, the building code. We can't even buy toilets that don't meet the flush, maximum flush rates. Gray water systems we can still do though, and we'll talk about that later. Efficient shower heads, that kind of stuff. They're making really good industries. Really takes up the slack there. Yards. Let's postpone looking at the yard thing until there's a whole unit on yards. We'll come back and look at that. Living room has similar types of things. You know, indoor air quality in a living room or bedroom, you can't, I don't know that you can measure the formaldehyde with a meter. You can smell it sometimes, you know, new carpets, right? Wood, new plywood and new oriented strand board, you can smell sometimes. That stuff's bad, but if you can smell it, then there's things you can do about that too, believe it or not. They actually make things that you can paint over furniture, clear things that seal in the stuff that's off-gassing formaldehyde. Replace carpets. That's a big suggestion. Sometimes you can't afford it, but carpets are nasty. We'll look at those. Most carpets, wool carpets are pretty good, but they're also expensive. Okay, let's go past these site location things. Okay, so the next page will say Santa Barbara City College Home Audit Survey. It's like the fourth handout, maybe. Everybody got that? So this is one we made up for the class, that class. I forget what year it was, but. So go to the second page of that and start in. So sustainability input. I still think they ought to be whole house audits because your health doesn't end just with the energy, right? You should do something about your water. I mean, there may not be nothing to do, but you should check it out. You should check out the air quality. And also if you have green interest, a lot of times you can do something that will cost you money, but won't benefit you directly, but it'll benefit the planet. And if you have the money, then people like to do it. If you don't have the money, it's not an issue. You just don't do it, you know. But some people have enough money to spare, they do things. So are you interested in this audit in order to save money on utility bills? No, yes, no, maybe. Are you interested in this audit to lower your carbon footprint or use planet resources more efficiently? And you can say yes or some or no. Sometimes there is hidden embedded energy or toxicity or ethical issues involved in some aspects of the life cycle of a product. We'll talk about all that later. And are you interested in using resources that are as green as possible? So for instance, a person may be a social activist and really spend part of their life trying to stop people being oppressed around the world. I mean, a lot of us feel that way. Some of us actually do things about it. And so for instance, the lumber industry said, well, there's especially lumber coming from Brazil and the tropics, where those governments aren't as, they're often corrupt and they don't have the EPA backing them like we do. And so we get a lot of lumber from those areas where they've gone in and oppressed indigenous people because it's on their land. They've just stolen the land, or they've kept the people out, or they've killed the people or whatever. They have labor practices that are really unfair to people. Even though it's that country, we don't like it worldwide, some of us here. And so the lumber industry started this, what's it called, FSC Forest Sustainability. Yeah. I forgot. FSC, right? And it's an organization, and they inspect the wood from its origin to its transportation to coming to the retail, wholesale to retail, all along the way, make sure labor practices are okay, indigenous people aren't being hurt, nothing's being polluted on the way and hurting the environment, which is really great. It's a great thing they do this. And you know, if you go to Home Depot, they were probably the last people to do it, but now half their wood is FSC certified. So that's a pretty general place, right, around the country. And so, so that's an example of how you can, you know, make sure the resources, not just the water and the air and the energy, but, you know, actual wood and those kind of resources are better. So people might be interested in that. And a lot of times it might not be a correction, but you know this stuff, so you can tell them that. You can say, yeah, when you get wood for a project or you're having your builders, tell them it has to be FSC certified and tell them where you can get it. So you can make the homeowner aware of that, and then when they go to buy wood themselves or through their contractor, they'll follow that. even though it doesn't directly help your business. And then there's all the stuff. You want to know if they own or rent, because renters can't do a lot with their houses, right? The landlord says, don't touch a thing, or tell me, I'll help you with some of this stuff. So that's important to know, because that'll indicate how much you're going to be able to do. The type of house is important. The stories are important for blower door test and ventilation. The stories make a difference on how you compute it. So all these things are numbers that you need. The time it's occupied, some houses aren't occupied all year round. That makes a big difference. So there's just a lot of questions to find out. So this tells you how complicated the workings houses are. Every aspect of a house has some bearing on how it performs. You don't know that normally. You just think, oh, it's a house. Who cares how many stories it is or how many people live there? But all those things make a big impact. The age of the house, huge impact, as some of you know. When I did my BPI test, they chose a house up on the Mission Ridge, and it was built in the 20s, and it didn't have any walls. It had some kind of interior siding that was glued to the exterior siding. And then it had posts every so often, but there weren't studs, so there wasn't any insulation at all. I thought, geez, I wonder how many more of these are in Santa Barbara, This is an expensive house, but that's a real hard thing. What are you going to do there, right?
Zip system.
Yeah, really something. Flat thing. Yeah.
From scratch, buddy. You built it wrong.
And then you can talk about.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're going to go through this list because it's going to show you guys where the problem areas are in a house and how involved it is, and then we're going to find out how to pinpoint that with our diagnostic equipment and then how to fix it. So this is the beginning of the whole process, the audit. And for us, we're trying to look at a house closely. So a lot of, some of you builders may have looked at it this way, but some of you new builders, new carpenters, or new construction people may not have thought about it in such detail. And then, of course, you ask them where there's drafts. Everybody knows where there's a draft in their house, and or if their house is just cold. And so that's really helpful to know. You can ask these people that, but the things that aren't so important on the survey, you just kind of ignore. And then draft, you zero in, you go, oh, okay, so that's really going to be a thing. And you're going to talk more about it when you get there. You're going to say, okay, let's talk about the drafts you mentioned. But you'll have a head start. You'll know what's going on a little bit. And then they'll help you pinpoint it more when you get there. Attic insulation, sometimes they can measure it, sometimes they won't be able to. Wall insulation, they probably won't be able to. They might know how thick the walls are. Some people know that. Non-builders probably wouldn't know it, right? It's a wall's a wall. Who knows where it is? Okay, then go to energy audit, top of the page. So that other was general stuff. This is still the survey that they're filling out. So you make them do it on their time, right? It doesn't cost you as much. But you want their input. It's totally valuable. They're the ones who live there. They're the ones who suffer through the building and the bills. So you gotta have their input. So is your heating costs included in your utility bill? So, renters, they don't always pay utilities. So there's, you need to know all that stuff because it has a bearing. What type of heating system? And that'll help you get prepared for what you're going to do there. Natural gas, electric, heat pump, forced air, wall heaters. When I grew up, I grew up in West LA, and we had these, the walls weren't very thick. And I don't think there was any insulation in them. And they had these furnaces on the wall, in all the rooms, natural gas. Natural gas was so cheap back then, it was almost free. God. So that's what happened to me with all this natural gas toxins. Now you can smell them too. So you have those wood stove, fireplace, the people using propane. How old is your heating system? All these things. They may not know a lot of these answers if they're new in the house or they haven't paid attention. But still, do you use a programmable thermostat? That's really critical. Because they have thermostats now that you can program. because the days of the week and the hours, different activities go on. You're not home all the time. You don't care if the house is heated then. So you can have it turned on an hour before you come home or your wife comes home or whatever. So you save all that energy. So those things are, and if they say, no, we don't have one of those, and right away you bingo, saving tons of money just by a simple change in thermostat. If they do have them, ask them how they set it. You can tell a lot from that. How much do they use additional heating? How many portable electric heaters do you use? It gets pretty detailed, huh? So that's the kind of stuff you have to ask them when you get there. So you might as well have them start thinking about it and get back to you. And cooling systems. Does anybody here have an air conditioning system that you use?
I have a window.
It's so funny. I know. A lot of the world's so heat bothered and getting worse, right? And people are dying from heat. This place just kind of stays, So yeah, so cooling, we would probably around here we wouldn't have as much to say, but some places get up. Ojai gets hot, right? It's not very far. Probably places up in North County get hot. Anybody live up in Lompoc or Santa Maria? They must get hotter than here a little bit, right?
Ojai's been snowing too.
Yeah, Ojai gets colder and hotter. I lived in Ojai for a while. It gets colder and hotter.
It's actually hotter in San Ynez than Lompoc.
San Ynez?
It's hotter than Lompoc and Santa Maria.
Oh, okay. They don't get as much ocean air, I guess. Yeah. So the further inland you get, I guess it's warmer.
San Ynez, all in other areas, it gets really hot.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes with 3 digits,
Yeah, yeah. So the air conditioning has some meaning there more than here, definitely. How about the cold? How cold? Will it get colder too?
It's really cold, yeah.
Yeah.
The lowest I remember is 24 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Or like -3 Celsius.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not pretty far
You see
away.
people leave in the house in their windshields because in the morning you'll find almost a quarter of an inch ice in your windshield.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I lived in Maine for 10 years and you always find it. Much of the year you find an inch of ice on your windshield. Yeah. That's not bad though, it's not that little bit of weather change, a little uncomfortable or a hassle, but not so much,
Yeah, it's only for a few hours.
Yeah, yeah. Even Ojai is a nice place to live, even though it has those extremes. I lived in Maine for 10 years, and I love the extremes. The winters got to me after a while. I couldn't take it, it's just so long, 6 months.
Okay, this
So,
one.
probably if I snowboarded more, that was before snowboards were big. Would have been more fun. Everything's harder. Anybody lived in snow, places that snow in the winter? God, everything's harder, It's like you can't do anything. It's just so, your body is not as loose because it's cold, and you've got more clothes on, so everything's a hassle. You get used to it, but then fans, whole house fans. Not many of us still have whole house fans. And then water heating. Water heating is going to take care of itself because they're going to outlaw. Well, they're already outlawing gas on new houses. And when that cycle, the people have them when it gets for enough long, then it'll be gone. And, but we've got these great fuel pump water heaters, heat pump water heaters that's going to be great. Right now they have hybrids. And I thought I knew enough about them that they were good, but I've heard people complain that the full hybrids don't heat. People like a lot of hot water, and they don't heat enough of it. So a lot of them, and I've seen when I researched it, that they sell these hybrid ones that when they need more heat than the heat pump can give, then they switch over to gas. They're still gas fuel or electric fuel. I think they're electric fuel, which is more expensive, but it's just a supplement, which means that they're still not getting enough. It's pretty amazing to think that you can get enough heat from normal water coming into your pipes. I don't know how, it's not that cold, right? But it's not warm either. That you get enough heat to take a hot shower from that. with no combustion, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? We're gonna talk about that. It's really a great technology. They just suck the heat right out. Well, they compress it too, which amps it, but together it's pretty cool. Then refrigerators, there's a lot of things to look for in refrigerators. We kind of take them for granted, but they can be real energy hogs. Clothes dryers, freezers. People here don't have freezers. People that hunt have freezers. In Maine, everybody hunts, so everybody's got a freezer. New England has a lot of freezers. Anybody here have a freezer in their house, like separate from the refrigerator? Yeah. Do you hunt?
No.
Just for extra food.
Yeah,
right?
just for
backup food. Yeah.
Well, for Costco microwave meals that get pull out from that.
Yeah, a lot of places people go hunting or they just buy big amounts of meat and stuff and into the freezer it goes. They're good for months. Cooking appliances, that's a big one. Microwaves, lighting. It's pretty extensive, huh? It goes on and on, but that's, if you're gonna do a job, do it right. So you gotta go into all these things. And we're now realizing how much all this contributes. We didn't for a long time. We had to study it. And over the years, just the last 30, 40 years, we've been studying this pretty hard, and they've come up with really good ways of finding out what's going wrong and good ways of fixing it. So that's what we're gonna study in here. Waterbed. Anybody ever slept on a waterbed? They're not faddish anymore. When I grew up in the 60s and 70s, the waterbeds were big. Oh, they were awful because they'd get cold if they weren't heated right. Something would go wrong, and you're just laying on this, this pad, this ocean of cold water. Oh boy. Yeah.
Who thought of that? Like, let's put water in a mattress.
Yeah, it's fun for a while, but and then spas and hot tubs, all that stuff. Okay, water audit. God, there's a lot to audit, huh? There's a lot to correct. Hopefully, we're getting healthier because of all this. Right? So indoor water use. Water costs money now too, right? It's more expensive when there's droughts. And sometimes you have to have it rationing too. So you can go into a lot of detail on fixtures and usage, how you use things. Do you leave faucets running when you're brushing your teeth or doing the dishes? So a lot of what these audits do is they educate the homeowners. Part of it's a money transaction. You're finding out things to save money, and you're doing things to fix it to save money. And then also you just want to educate so the quality of your life's better in all these dimensions. So that comes along with it. So that's good. So that's another reason to know a lot of this, because they're going to ask you all this stuff. Well, what can I do about that? Or, we've always had that problem. What do we do? Air quality, that's a big one now because we're making houses tighter, and we still have the same crappy products that come in the house. And so, we figured that out, but people don't know how to do it, and it costs money. So, okay. Then the last one is site visit checklist. I think that's your last handout. So this is actually something you'd have on a clipboard when you go to the house to inspect it, right? So you got their input on that previous survey, and you transferred all the stuff to this checklist. So when you go through, you know what things are already flagged. So site inspection, no structural safety problems, look for shading and PV thermals. Sometimes overheating can be a problem just putting a shade on the outside of the window, they aren't always expensive solutions. Getting the right type of blinds. Some blinds are block heat better than others. All this stuff. And then Then the other side of energy audit is, like we've been saying, the diagnostic tests. The water audit is not just for drinking water, but for water that hits your house, like rain, storms. If they flood your crawl space, or they get into your walls and rot your walls. So, and then your use of water, if you're overusing water. And then outside lawn water is just important to deal with. Indoor air quality, the ventilation, by law, it has to be a certain way. The inspectors don't come to your houses if you don't build or add or anything. So you could have a really bad ventilation system and no one would know it. Does everybody have a fan over their range in their cooking range and their, vent hood? Because I've been to houses. I did a bunch of, when I was first taught this class, we go to different people's houses. It's a very vulnerable thing to bring a class to your house. And I would see ranges with no fan, just a hole going all the way up through the roof, just a hole, which is not a big deal. I mean, that's the way the house came, but it doesn't get rid of any of your cooking gases or odors. The odors are usually good. People say, oh, we don't want to do it. I love, garlic and onion odor. Why not? But some people don't like all that stuff from the house. But yeah, you want to be able to get rid of that. Even in the water vapor, right? Cooking produces a lot of water vapor. And if that doesn't go out, it won't always go up. It goes like this, and that's into your room, and it's adding to the humidity of your room and possible problems with that. So it's amazing what you find when you actually go look at houses. Okay, diagnostic test, gas leak test is another thing we have. It's a gas meter, and you can go along, and there's certain places where, like it flexes and joints, where you test the gas, because the natural gas might not be making it into your house without leaking somewhere. Now, you all smell natural gas, right? Most of you? That's not its smell. That's a smell they add to natural gas. Methane doesn't have a smell. It's like carbon monoxide. But fortunately, they do that so you can smell it. So if you have a leak, you go, oh gosh, there's a gas leak, and open windows and call the plumbers. But that's why they're so uptight about CO, because there's no odor to it. And they're not providing the CO, like they provide the gas. So you do, and then you do radon test too for that air quality. We'll talk about all that later in detail. But look at this, go to page 2 of that last audit and look at the energy audit. So site inspection, shade, house shade. So you look at the shade, you look at passive heating possibilities. That's using sunlight through the windows, so you don't have to spend money on electric, gas heat. If they have any photovoltaic, solar, what the tree shading situation is. Then they go inside, look at this. Then they analyze the furnaces. They use equipment to analyze it. That's a whole bunch of stuff they do that you would do. From your survey, you would check things and cross out things that weren't a problem. But this would be the sheet you'd start with, and you kind of customize it. So you can see all the, the huge number of areas there are to make improvements. Water audit. Again, we'll talk about that more we have a whole unit on the site. Water quality, water softener. Sometimes pipes can be a problem. Yeah, look at Detroit. Was it Detroit? Flint? No.
Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the house pipes, it was the city pipes. But sometimes house pipes can be a problem too, so. Okay. It's all for that. God. So I want to do 2 quick videos, and we can probably go, earlier than usual, earlier than usual. All my lessons are from a time when it was different. So Tim wants us to have full classes. So recording stuff. I'd say he is the boss. and he'll be hearing this on the.
We're going till 10.
The thing that's different about a Virgo vacation home, you always have.
Welcome back to Powerhouse. Today on the show, we're uncovering what it takes to build energy efficiency into new construction. Now, for a lot of us, we may only build one home in our lifetimes, and we're not the experts. So it pays to bring in experts who can offer their expertise, provide comfort and important information, like a HERS rater. Shannon Moe is a HERS rater, and Shannon, explain to us what a HERS rating is.
Well, HERS rating is modeling.
So, kind of off right at the pass. So HERS is an acronym, HERS, Home Energy Rating System, right? So that they don't explain that, but you should know that. And the whole HERS system came out of another organization. The name escapes me. We're going to study it in detail, but Resonant, and that's another acronym, but that's what it is. And they came online about 10, 15 years ago, and there were a couple that competed, and Resonant sort of won out. So HERS is the one that's up. And HERS has gotten involved in the building, in the building department. What do you call it? Not inspection, but permitting. So we'll talk about that too, because what's happened is because of the new attention we're paying to houses and the new technology and science we're applying, there's a lot of circumstances that the old way that they train inspectors, they wouldn't know what to do about it, right? They'd say, well, I don't know if that's going to work in the same way. So they had to quantify that. So they got HERS to come in. And so I'll just tell you briefly, we'll study this later. The permit requires two methods, either a prescriptive method, like you have to have R18 in your wall, and they look at your wall, and if you've got R18, they sign it off. Prescription tells you what you need. Then there's a performative alternative. So if you want to do something that's different, or you want to trade off things, say, well, I don't have R18 here, but I've got, some other thing that increases the energy, they'll be able to give you credit for that, but they don't know how to do it. So they get these HERS raters who deal with this new technology and stuff, and they monitor it and sign off and do the paperwork, and then you turn it in and you're allowed to do your house in a slightly different way, but it still is energy efficient or whatever. It's just getting too complicated. The inspectors, anybody here an inspector, father or mother's an inspector? Yeah, there's a lot to know, right? You go into a house and you've got plans, but still, it's pretty complicated. So they just can't keep up their education with them. You can imagine how many inspectors the world needs, right? There's a lot of housing going on. They just can't keep up with the training. So this performative side of it, they made it a whole side, and they've got places, people like these HERS raters to verify the alternative
testing
products
that results in a score that we can use to compare the relative energy efficiency of one house to another. A HERS rater takes into account the physical features of the house, the insulation, mechanical equipment, air leakage of the house, combines them into a software model to come up with a single number that can be used like an MPG sticker to tell us approximately how much energy a house is going to use. HERS rater also does some verification. So we do this model at the beginning. At the end, we actually test the house. We do an envelope test. We do a duct leakage test to make sure that what we planned to happen actually did happen.
So ideally, you like to be part of the entire construction process from this point forward.
So they'll design these alternative systems, and then the government, the building department doesn't know whether they were actually built in. So these guys they test it along the way, and at the end they test it, and it has to pass those tests. And they turn in those results, and the government says, okay, great. So that's what he's there through the whole process.
It's best to have a HERS rater involved from the very beginning and point out things, be that third set of eyes that helps you find things that might otherwise get missed.
Great. Well, why don't we go inside and you walk us through some of the examples of the things you look for. Well, Shannon, at this stage of the game, this house is literally pretty transparent. What are the things that you look for?
So,
You know, I do
Kevin, so
inspection
here they're gonna actually mark
just before
things
drywall
that
goes
you
on.
can
And
see
what I'm
already.
looking for are, in a lot of cases, air sealing details, making sure that we don't have conditioned air leaking outside.
So you're right,
So I'll
you
be
do
looking
those
for
before
things
the
like
drywall's on.
these wire penetrations to the attic, making sure that those get sealed. I look for the rough opening around the windows, look to make sure that that's been sealed. Anything that might leak air from the house or outside. Also, at the same time, the HVAC contractor has been on site. He's got his ducts installed. He's got them sealed. So I'll take a look at the duct work and make sure that all the sealing work's been done is what we expect, and that we're not going to have problems down the road when it comes time to our final inspection. We actually test these.
So this is your first view of a house. Let's go next door and take a look at a house that's a little farther down the process. And would that be considered your final phase or your final inspection?
That would be final inspection, yeah.
Okay, Shannon, so here we are in another basement, and this home is, as you can see, pretty much complete. So this would either be where you enter the process if someone already built your home, or this would be considered like your second phase, right, to come in and
See the drywall
test things once you get here.
That's right. At this point, when the house is mostly finished, I'll come in and I'll do some testing on the entire house envelope and on the mechanical system as well. So we'll walk into the basement, we'll go into the mechanical room, and we'll look for things like duct sealing, making sure that the ducts have been well air sealed. Then we'll do some testing on the heating and cooling system. We'll do what's called a duct blaster test, where I depressurize the ducts and I check for leakage. I'm actually testing to make sure that the duct sealing that's gone on up here is working, and that the heating and cooling system is providing to the rooms that heated or cooled air that we're intending to provide to those rooms. In essence, I measure the amount of air that is exiting the fan, and that tells me how much air is leaking from the ducts. So there are a couple different tests that I do. One of them is testing to see how much air is being lost into the house itself, so into the floors or into the walls. And then I do a test to determine how much air is being lost to outside the house. So how much of that heated or cooled air is actually heating the great outdoors.
Now, because it sounds like some of these things are not easy to remedy, or you can only do so much, again, that just reiterates the point that you made earlier, that it's really important to get a HERS rater involved early on in the process.
That's right. The HERS rater can do the tests, verify that everything was intended to be done was done, and everything is working as it's supposed to.
All right, thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you.
If you'd like more information about making your home energy efficient throughout the building process, go to our website, powerhousetv.com.
So, it costs money to hire a guy they'll come in at the beginning, they'll even help you design more energy efficient things. But a lot of those cost money, so if you don't have the money to customize it like that and pay them all along the way to do this, you would just do a prescriptive thing. You just do everything according to code. This much insulation here, this much insulation here, blah, blah, blah. And it wouldn't be as tight of a house, but it would be sufficient. I mean, the government thinks it's sufficient. And it's all you can afford. So, people do different things, what they can afford, and houses are expensive. So, but some of the stuff's so complex that you really need an expert like a HERS rater to come in and design and along the way make sure it's done well. Okay. Any questions about any of this stuff? Don't tell me you guys just want to go home and go to bed. Come on.
I want to go test my house.
Yeah.
Hey.
I can't wait to get home and test my house. Let me just make sure I get covered.
Make sure my bed works.
I'm going to spend my water bill.
So, fixes to certain problems and like be able to see like if one could implement it like by themselves like in their own house, or if they would need to hire somebody, or
I only got part of that.
Would,
Yeah,
is
sorry.
there somewhere or like a database or website or something where you could see, like, if I have this problem, this would be a solution to it?
Oh, yeah, no, we're gonna do that in class.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, no, half the class is the solutions.
okay.
Oh, yeah. And then also we'll tell you resources for getting information, you know, more into it and stuff. Yeah, yeah, good question. Yeah, no, it'd be pretty bad if, you know, you didn't know how to do it, but, there's new ways of doing things like sealing. We used to go around with caulk and try to find all the holes. Now they actually have a machine that they turn on after the drywall's in, and it spews out this fog of sealant that's suspended in the air, and the house is blower doored, so it's pressurized, so this stuff goes out all the leaks and seals them. It's a machine that does it. This is totally the state of the art of house sealing. It's relatively new. I've got a couple of videos on it. Yeah, it's just amazing what people can figure out, you know. But this, think of all the labor. You're going everywhere, every inch of your house, you're looking for all this stuff. And this machine just, you don't need to find it ahead of time. This machine will just automatically, because all the holes are sucking air out, and it sucks this cloud of sealant right into the hole, and that's it.
Do you need to like tape off places?
Yeah, you'll see. We'll do a video. We'll do a YouTube on it. Yeah, we'll do that. But yeah, there's a lot of new things, and there's just some old, you know, hands-on caulking and that. But the caulking's changed too. You know, it's gotten a lot better and more specific. So a lot of people know things from their parents that may be outdated, right? Like there maybe was one type of caulking 50 years ago when your parents were doing it, and they'll say, just go to the store and get caulking. You go there and there's like 50 different types for different applications, right? So all that's improved. The caulkings last longer. I mean, it's, you know, industry's done a great job. We have Tyvek and all kinds of things. So that's what we want to try to get you to know and hear, so you know. And this is all good information for your own home and your own life. And you may be, career-wise, you may be in a company where you just do what the people above you say to do. But even if you're, say, a framer and you put on the Tyvek after you sheathe, it's great if you really know how to do it right. You know, you can either just do it right while you're doing it and tell other people the right way to do it, or you can talk to your employer and say, you know, I took this class and this is what we learned, and I think it, you know, look at this, doesn't this make more sense? So, you know, there's things you can do even if you're working for someone else in a place. So you have to be careful. You don't want to piss your employer off, you know. there's a delicate way to do it, but you can do it. You know? Yeah. Some people are really open. Some bosses are really open, and they listen to their employees. You know, they should, because employees have a lot of, not just life experience, but they've been working other places. They see a lot of stuff. That's how you learn. You know, you get 2 or 3 employees, and then pretty soon you know a lot about certain things. You know, so. But yeah, that good part of the class is going into that stuff too. So we're step at a time. Audit, find out what's wrong, diagnose with machines, start rehabilitating the house. All right, you guys. Oh, so next week we're going to do insulation, and we'll do some stuff out in the patio. I got to go rustle up some walls and insulation, see what we got, and we'll talk about. Oh, hold on a second. Oh yeah, heat transfer. So that's really interesting. It's physics, but it's simple. But we finally figured out how heat actually transfers, how it moves around and gets out of your house. And there's some interesting things that people didn't know that we've learned. And so it affects how we insulate and deal with heat. So that'll be fun. We'll do that. And then we'll look at a passive house, which is one of the more tight houses. It's a type of house, a way of making a house. We'll look at some of those videos. Those are pretty cool. So I wish we'd use more passive solutions, like getting the sun through windows to heat the house. But you have to have space next to your house where sun can get in. And we tend to be building more denser in cities, so that's a problem. I wish we'd build less dense and have that. And then just not use so much to heat, you know. And the passive house doesn't use much to heat, not because they have passive solar. They do sometimes, A lot of times they have little windows where they don't need a view or anything. But the house is just so damn tight that no warm air can leak out. I mean, they're amazing. They hardly need any heating at all. So we're getting, it was kind of a luxury at one time. It came from Germany and it was kind of novel here. But we have this thing called zero energy houses, which is the same idea. And we're just heading that way. And the building code's prompting us, and global warming scare is prompting us. And pretty soon it'll just be standard building. We'll just make really tight houses, and then we'll make sure we know how to keep the ventilation, because they get so tight, then you're breathing like this right here. You can tell stuff that's made, that's not wood, that's just, particle board. It's probably got a lot of formaldehyde. It's just everywhere, rugs and everything. And so we're breathing that. So then we have to know how to get out of the house, but we control how to get it out of the house so it doesn't create drafts. So we're still making the house leak, but we're controlling the leaks. That's the whole thing. When you don't control them, it's miserable. You're never comfortable. So we control them, and then we can make our health good as a result. So that's the whole plan. But we've learned a lot about ventilation and how air moves and heat moves. So we'll learn about that. Okay, so get your books. Remember, the school has cheap ones. If you haven't ordered it, if you're lying to me and just said you ordered it, go to school and get it. I mean, it's cheaper there than it is on Amazon.
Yeah,
so, or they're out, but I mean, call them up and go down there. I mean, it's just right. You might go to main campus anyway during your day.
Got one on Monday.
Yes,
on Tuesday I got one.
Yeah.
At the bookstore.
Yeah.
How much you pay for it?
Did they still have some there?
I don't know.
Can you tell? Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think it was like $40.
45.
Or 45.
I actually got a deal.
It's like 45 on Amazon, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was 40?
I think it's 45. I don't really remember.
Yeah, it's comparable. I thought it was less when somebody said it, but I mean, comparable.
It was in
great.
the 40s.
You don't have to, well, if it's 45 on Amazon, you pay for shipping too, right? So if you're on campus or you're near there, there's no shipping. You just go get it.
Right.
So it's probably a little bit less.
No, I didn't buy it.
So anyway, and you should do Prime, remember, for just in general, especially as a student, they offer it free. And it's good and stuff like that. You even get stuff the day before you order it. No, not quite. It's going to be that way pretty soon.
Raise your mind.
Yeah. Okay, you guys, so read the pages that's due, if you have your book, and you should have your book, or borrow a book or something.
Yeah, I paid $35 on Amazon.
Okay. So, and I will see you Thursday, yeah? All right, have a good week.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Or brown.